21st years, the number of female software has increased by just 2%. This is very minute. And the turnover rate is more than twice as high for women as for men in tech industry jobs. 1 in 3 women say they have experienced gender bias at work. Also, 50% of women in tech leave their job by the age of 35. This is still a very young age. In 2019, only 2.8% of global venture capital funding went to women-led startups, and in 2020 that dropped to 2.3%. This is not a good news at all. Having these sisters here today is a reminder that despite the low number of women in ICT fields, we have started and are continuing to break the narrative by having more STEM programs, facilitating workshops, amending policies, and creating new strategies for increasing number of young girls and women in the ICT field. Our girls today lack her stories and documentations of women in technology and innovation. Do we all know that Ada Lovelace, the first world computer programmer, was the first world computer programmer? Hedy Lamarr, the founder of Wi-Fi, and Radia Perlman, the mother of internet, Katherine Johnson, African-American NASA mathematicians. These women show that women are in this field of ICT and innovation. So what we need is really to strengthen our effort, our collective effort to make sure that our young women, our children, they really join the field of ICT and technology, because it is the future. Our fellow heroes here in Africa and those in our states and cities have illustrated that it is possible. Even our sisters that will see them talking to us about ICT and innovation, as I've mentioned them, they'll be in the panel. These are really clear evidence that women, we can do it, and women, we can break the ceiling. We have posed the question today: how do we envision the future of women in technology? This is a question that everybody or everyone in this platform, we have to ask ourselves: what is the future of women in technology? We may have some of the answers today, but this should be a food for thought. That is technology bringing or broadening the gender gap in our region, countries, content, and the world at large? Indeed, we need to question ourselves that while the technology is advancing so fast, is it bridging the gap or is it broadening the gap? And if it is broadening the gap, what should be done? Think of our sisters, our girls in the rural area, grassroots area, where there is no electricity, where they don't have even access to internet, access to smartphones. What should be done? So this is food for thought. In our discussion today, I think some of these questions we'll hear from our sisters, because they're practicing in the industry, and what are they doing to help other sisters, to help our young girls to access technology and innovation, because it is the future. I'd like to quote Susan Wojcik, CEO of YouTube, from 2015 to date. She says, though we do need more women to graduate with technical degrees, I always like to remind women that you don't need to have science or technology degrees to build a career in technology. We have very good examples of our sisters in Tanzania. We recently had one of our young feminists from Young Feminist Forum who was sharing her stories or her journey in technology and innovation, and she wasn't graduated from tech fields, But what she did, she really, she's now really a very good participant in technological fields. So it is possible. I've seen lawyers here in Tanzania. I've seen people from arts and creative arts. They have not shifted, but they're integrating ICT in whatever they are doing. So this year is encouraging us that whatever we are doing, technology, ICT innovation, we need to make sure that we integrate in everything that we're doing. If you're a lawyer, you have to integrate ICT and innovation in whatever you're doing. If you're a gender activist, you have to integrate ICT and technology in whatever you're doing. So having said this, let me now welcome you all to this space today, where we'll really have time to listen to our sisters from ICT and technology field. You are all most welcome, and you are also, I really wish everybody will open up and give ideas and their thoughts about the future of women in technology and innovation. You're all welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very brief and intense from our executive director. To start with, let me start with Ms. Nashilongo Gervasius. I think our executive director finished very well, that you don't have to be a tech person to do tech, but you are a tech person. Kindly give us your insight, previewing the policy context. What are your thoughts on women's participation in digital media and spaces? What are the challenges and what are the opportunities? And as far as you speak on that, kindly also explore on what could be the efforts to be employed to increase women participation in digital spaces. Welcome, Ms. Nashilongo.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity to be meeting with sisters from the region and brothers I see here. I've been introduced already. I just wanted to sort of clear or put a disclaimer there that I am a public interest technologist and not a computer science, for instance. By that, it means that I'm interested in technology from a public policy perspective, and hence consulting, and hence other ways that I've been working with technology. So that's out of the way. I'll go ahead and maybe just add one or two more things that are possibly related to the work that I do. So amongst others, I had served in the Namibia Presidential Task Force on the Fourth Industrial Revolution, that deals directly with technology and the intersection of humanities, and doing that at a very rapid pace. So with that, then I'll go ahead and just really reflect on those questions as Flora have asked, right? So from the maybe in presenting the policy landscape, let me start with this introduction that the African continent at this point is only 30% of the population that has access to the internet. So within our contributions today, I think that's a very important number that we need to consider, right? That as we think about connecting women, and this as I go further in indicating those opportunities and the challenges, we are engaging with that number in mind, that it is only the 30% of Africans in general that has access to technology or to the internet. right? So out of that 30%, we can only imagine how many of those are women, right? So in that, in regards to the general participation of women in digital matters, we are seeing an increasing participation of women, particularly on e-learning, on digital learning platforms, for instance, that is displayed through, for instance, universities as formal structures of learning, but also informal structures of learning is generally taking off within the African region, right? But also the other is digital participation in entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship that is based on digital platforms. I'm not too sure. I'm sure that this is a situation that is all over the African continent, where we're seeing more and more women, for instance, selling their services, old and new types of products, using particularly the technological means, WhatsApp, your Instagram and social platforms, but also the general web through their websites, just amongst the others, right? So with that also then opens up the broader interaction of women in, or participation of women in the digital financial space, also known as fintech, where, for instance, in East Africa, you have a much structured means of passing on digital currencies, but also normal currencies through online platforms such as M-Pesa. But in Southern African regions, we have, for instance, what is known the wallets that many of the banks have introduced, and that has provided women particularly an opportunity where you are paid for your services or for your products instantly, particularly in the absence of hard cash, right? So that provides an opportunity, but also that largely has become a participation platforms for women to sort of find means of contribution of payments towards their services again and their products. And that goes beyond, for instance, women and girls who lives in cities and towns, but even within the rural areas where it has become very easy for for you to sell, for instance, your marula oil, from a village downtown in Angola or in Zambia or Namibia, for that matter, and be able to do that for suppliers who are in cities or in towns. So we're increasingly seeing that. So that's on participation. And of course, the participation goes beyond the e-learning, the entrepreneurship, in financial technology, as I've mentioned. E-health has also largely taken off within the African regions and Southern African region in particular, where it has become very easy for you to trace, for instance, issues of, say, your maternity, and putting you in direct contact with your service providers. And this is maybe more towards the cities, but there's also other means for rural areas, for instance, direct SMSs, or from say the clinic to a person that lives in the rural areas, but also we in areas, for instance, where there is say, for instance, the epidemic such as cholera that we saw in Malawi, and now the floods and many other catastrophes. So we're seeing constantly that women, even in those spaces, are not necessarily just receiving the messages, but also very proactive, partaking in using technology to convey messages, to track their needs, for instance, just amongst others. So I hope that answers to the question of the participations. And before I really get into the challenges and opportunities, and then later the policy and what the ideal situation ought to be. So in terms of the challenges, I think it is, as I've already started, is that not a lot of people are onto the internet. In many countries, the majorities of those who are offline are women. So that means that it's already limiting in terms of the opportunities that are available for women to get online. And that is sort of influenced by a number of reasons. But number one reason is really issues of access, right? That the digital, say, handset or the technologies itself, and even how we access such technologies, it's very, very limiting. In many of the cases, and many of the countries, you will have to travel long distance to get into a town where you are able to buy a handset or computer or a phone, for instance. Right. But even when in doing that, from an access point, is also issues of the quality of whatever that instruments that you are able to use for your technical or for your technological development, for instance, or technological interactions. Right. It could be very easy for you to buy a technological equipment, for instance, but the quality determines how long, or the longevity of how you're going to be engaging on that. Right. So the next is availability, right? That technological equipments or phones or computers or other means, for instance, are not always available where we need them to be. And I think that also speaks to the issues of access, right? So with that then, with that then comes also the issue of affordability. It might be not available. So back on availability, it might not be available because it's very hard to get those technology in the specific areas of the country, but also that in countries, for instance, where policies of type approval that requires that is only a specific computer or phone that meets specific needs can get into a country, that makes accessibility even further and unattainable for a number of people. So in terms of affordability, we find that one, the technological equipment such as phones, such as computers, just as amongst others, are very, very expensive, and not an ordinary woman or man can afford it. When you can afford it, when it breaks down, the next is really an issue about, can you repay it? And most of the time, you would be able to repay it the cost that you have acquired it for. But also in terms of affordability, there's also a number of challenges that is related to the cost of data, the cost of the internet that makes you partake in the digital space, for instance. So that becomes one of the other issues. Yes, I see your mic is open. I don't know if that's you need to. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So that's on affordability again. That technological equipments are not affordable, are not the easiest, are not the cheapest, for instance, but also the data to ensure that you're connected is not readily available. It's not, as cheap to maintain for you to stay online, and so you can engage, or so you can learn, or so you partake in your health matters, or even in democratic discourses, and that happens particularly on social media platforms. So those are some of the challenges, and that the policy environment is also provides challenges to, particularly for women, that in many of the cases in the projects that we have implemented, also research that we have conducted in the African region, for instance, we found out that the policies, whether those are technology or gender-related or gender-specific policies, are very, very silent about the empowerment of women using technology. And so that makes it very ambiguous about who has the responsibilities of, say, training women or building capacities, or teaching women or teaching them how to code, but also teaching them on myriads of skills that is necessary for participation in the digital space. And so there's a need, the challenges of the policy being silent, the policies being I don't know, oblivious of technological opportunities that lies with technology and human becomes also a challenge. The other challenge is security. That technology comes in itself has always been, because of the many people that are partaking in the technological space. Not all of them obviously are doing that genuinely. And with that has posed a number of security issues where we see women are hacked, women are being harassed online, women are being violated online. And so that also becomes an issue of a challenging issue for a lot of women to partake in within the digital space. So in addition, let me move over to opportunities. I think there's no doubt that technology offers a myriad of opportunities to women and girls, depending on where they are on the African continent. So given that there would be, say electricity in all of Africa, I'm sure all women would be able to upgrade their skills. All women would be able to partake in the financial space that offered by the technological landscape, for instance. And so then the opportunities becomes that we have very intentional policy landscapes that allows or that implements, that requires, that sort of focuses on women to sort of attain all the necessary tools and opportunities that the technology offers. The other opportunity is that the technological landscape has sort of let us or avail for us tools to communicate with each other, like we are doing now, that we are in touch with each other, that we are advocating together, that we are availing our resources and sharing to each other and sharing lessons and collaborating. And I think that generally has also been a one advantage of technology in general, the ability or the opportunity for global citizens to collaborate, to work. I see a lot of maybe not a lot, but most of the colleagues that I'm on a panel with here are people that I've worked with, have collaborated with, and we have engaged together. So that's one advantage or one opportunity that the technological space provides for us. But also it provides, again, many of those opportunities for us to learn, to pick up different skills, whether it's learning a skill from YouTube or how do I take, what are the strategies for me to take my skills of making, what we call fat cakes in Southern Africa to another level, how to make it differently so that I can sell it at a different price, and in a way make a bit more money and be able to feed my children a little bit, a very diverse, for instance, a healthy or diet, for instance. So there's myriads of opportunities within the internet. So for education, opportunities for entrepreneurship, collaboration, and really just being part of the communities that we are able to voice, to share our concerns, even at at a local level. So in terms of what an ideal situation should look like for true participation of women in the digital landscape, that requires really that the policies are very intentional as a government foundational issue of empowering women, that digital literacy, for instance, is prioritized by these policies so that women and men, for that matter, are educated in a way that they are taught the advantages and the disadvantages of what lies onto this, barb or blob called the internet, and also taught the opportunities that lies with being connected. So that's from a policy perspective. Other opportunities really are that all stakeholders within the society, civil society, government, the academia, the media, the regulators, for instance, should be able to engage and share whatever, even private sector, for instance, and engage in community capacity building activities, partner with each other, and so to make sure that the women can fully participate within the digital landscape, and they are educated for that matter. All right. I'm not too sure if I can end here at this point. Flora, it looks like I must have taken a bit of time, but I really appreciate and I look forward to come back and engage again.
Thank you so much, Nashilongo. And yes, you used quite a bit of time, but thank you for the insights. They were really helpful. Now, straight to Madam Nonhlanhla Dlamini. She has really explained about policies. Our previous speaker has said the policies are silent. We don't have gender-related policies, lack of security. Now, you tell us more of the role of women rights organization in advancing and strengthening women's participation in leadership, but as well, give us an insight that despite the increasing usage of digital media, promoting different engagements, as the previous speaker has just said, yet only few women leaders are utilizing the digital space. So as a former member of parliament, what could be the reason? So give us an insight, Ms. Nonhlanhla.
Thank you so much, Flora. And you will excuse me for my voice. I had a terrible flu, so I'm kind of recovering. So this is not my normal voice, but I hope I'm audible enough. As I've been introduced, maybe I could just have my camera on, just so you can see the person that's talking, and then I will then mute my video, because then there'll be poor network. So good afternoon, everyone, and I'm Nonhlanhla Dlamini, the Executive Director of SWAGA, as I've been introduced, and the former member of parliament. So with regards to the question that has been asked, I think to start with, what I want to say is that we're not just supposed to be looking at the future of technology for women, but it's the now of technology for women, because we cannot afford to let women stay behind, because everything now we're doing, we need to
we can't hear you properly. Ms. Nonhlanhla, we can't really hear you properly. Okay, as we are waiting for her to come back, I think let's just give us 2 minutes, or else we will go straight to Miss Rebecca Riakitimbo. So, Miss Rebecca, as a person who provides technology solutions to solve community challenges, including engagement in digital policies, what do you propose African countries to provide spaces for women in digital space, especially from grassroots? As we are waiting for Ms. Lala to come back, Ms. Rebecca, can you chip in?
Hello.
Yes, hello.
So apologies
Is
for that. It's the network problems, what the previous speaker was talking about. I think I just got disconnected.
So sorry, we actually even started with the other speaker, but you can proceed if you're back. Miss Rebecca, you'd wait until Ms. Notrala finishes.
Okay, thank you, and accept my apologies. It's network problems. It's some of the challenges that we're faced with. In fact, this morning I was attending a meeting from one of the leading network in the country, which is MTN. And these were some of the things that we're talking about, the issue of coverage, that for us to properly embrace technology, we need to have 100% coverage in the country. And not only that, the issue of affordability, something which the speaker has kind of spoken about. The question was, why is it that we still have women lagging behind with technology? I think our upbringing has been that problem. And one of the things which I really liked about what MTN said was that they're deliberately bridging the digital gap on issues of technology, because they realize that women are kind of lagging behind. IT has been known to be a male's dominated area. It's only now that women are beginning to get into that space. So the socialization that we've kind of been brought up about has resulted in the reason why we're actually still having fewer women that are exploring around technology, and yet it is the new normal. And even in the area of GBV, because in some other advanced countries, they actually have some software whereby if you are being subjected to gender-based violence, you can actually click a button and it will give a location of where we are. And I think as a country, we are also moving towards that, whereby if a child makes a call, you can actually tell where that call is being made, and then you can actually reach out to assist that person. And what we've also realized is that the children that are born now, because they are born in the era of technology, whether it's girls or boys, they will be in a better position to embrace technology than the generation that was born before technology. And why I'm saying that is because now our children as young as 2 years old can actually navigate through the phone. They know where your YouTube is. They know where they will get their games. They can actually navigate around and get some areas where even an adult will probably not be. So the reason why we are still having fewer women, it's because of that. And I think it's important that then we need to come up with legislation that we will ensure that women are deliberately channeled into technology. For instance, if there's enrollment, because that is where we need to start. If there's enrollment and schools, make sure that you have a 50-50 kind of presentation. If we are having IT subjects, make sure that at least there's 50-50 representation. And why I'm actually also saying that we are going to an era whereby some of the professions that we used to, like your teaching, your nursing, your accounting, would actually be replaced by these new fields around IT. So to respond to your question, the reason we're having fewer women, it's because of the upbringing, it's because of the way we've been brought out. How we could get them in is to come up with legislations that would actually be conducive for them. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Notlandla, but I'd really like you to go deep in terms of women leaders. Why do we have few women leaders using these spaces? Because for the ones that are there, we expect they could help support us, document, share what they are doing on the ground, especially with the grassroots. Why are women leaders on media or using social media or using digital platforms?
Thank you, Flora. I think the main reason comes from the fact that most of these women that are in leadership now were actually born before the technology boom. So it's not something that they've sort of had in their mind. So it's something new that they are still learning, that they are still trying to adapt to. Whereas if we would follow the trend, few years from now, the children that have been born like our 2000 will be better equipped in those leadership positions in terms of really getting into these spaces. So that's certainly the reason. And also, a lot of them don't have the ability to explore, like they're not keen in terms of exploring, such that even if a person is carrying a smartphone, and you would still have a lot of applications in it, but will not even know about it because people don't know the power of a smartphone. They think a phone is just for calling, getting messages, and that's it. Yet there's so much in it that you can actually get. But I think we have a responsibility also as women to empower each other, because some of them, it's just an issue of fear. I'll make an example. I had a colleague who, when WhatsApp was still new, who had a child that was going to study in Australia. And then I asked her to join WhatsApp, and he was afraid. I don't know why, but she was just afraid. She was not comfortable with joining a WhatsApp back then. And then when the daughter went overseas, she was shocked at how they could have video calls on a WhatsApp, how she could regularly communicate with the child. So now that she was able to see the benefits, she didn't have a problem using it. So I think we need to consciously do some education for our women to make use of those digital spaces and know what is available for them there, because the moment they know, the moment they see the benefits, then they'll be able to use them. A lot of these young people now are using social media to sell whatever that they have. So if these women will know the power of technology, then they will be in a position to use it. So I would say the reason they don't use it is certainly because they don't know what's in there for them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Notlandla. Now we go to Rebecca. As I mentioned the question earlier, as a person who provides technology solutions to solve community challenges, including engagement in digital policies, what do you propose African countries to provide to provide spaces for women in digital spaces, especially from grassroots? I think some of it Ms. Notlandla has just answered by saying they don't have an awareness, they need an awareness. So maybe you can add more from that.
Sure, thank you, Flora. I think the challenges have really been identified. Most of them are from Nashilongo's talk, also from the talk from just the previous speaker. There's a challenge, especially in getting women in the local communities to engage in technology. And one of the things that is a huge hindrance is access. We've seen that we have challenges with connectivity. So it's much more wider, and the problem is much bigger for women, especially in marginalized communities. Issues around affordability itself, affordability of a device, a smartphone itself, the lowest, I think, it can correct me if I'm wrong, but in most countries, for example, let's say Tanzania, maybe to get a good smartphone, at least 100,000. and above. And then we have the challenge that you find that even for those who have access at least to communication, it's only through the small mobile phone, the feature phones. They do not have access to smartphones because of the price. Then there's also the challenge of the affordability itself of connectivity, that is bandwidth. And technology goes hand in hand with the ability for people to have access to the internet. So the challenge of affordability really is a huge interest to be able to get women to participate, especially women from marginalized communities. So for me, I think one thing that African governments needs to start with first is the access issue, making sure we make the internet very affordable and technology very affordable to most people. That can happen by maybe us having local innovations. We have people within local communities developing things like phones. I would be happy if there comes a time when, for example, in Tanzania, we don't have to import telephones, but we are able to create them ourselves. That would be a great advancement. African countries are really trying to move towards that. We have people trying to produce, like we have Okapi in DRC, we have some company in Kenya as well. I don't remember exactly the exact name, who are also developing phones. I think that they will be able to create affordable technologies like these, devices that are affordable. It will be very helpful to get people connected. So I think one thing that African governments really need to work on at most is to make sure that we have that affordability of devices as well as connectivity. By connectivity, I mean the affordability of bandwidth, being able to buy data. So because if you look at a normal household that maybe is based in a rural area or rural setting, you find that being able to afford the connectivity, maybe 2,500 for 1 GB, which lasts for 24 hours. That is an amount of money that one can use to purchase food. Maybe they can use to purchase bread, cooking oil, or even whatever they will use for food at that day. So they find themselves at a position where they have to choose between getting connected or being able to afford meals. So I think access is really critical. But then there's also issues around policy, which I think Nashilongo has touched on. It is very important for African governments to look at how the policy is enabling for innovation, is enabling for technology that is inclusive and that allows for women to participate in the digital space. Policies can be in form of policies that address trust issues, things like data protection and privacy, to ensure that we have women participating, feeling that they can trust this technology, they can trust participating in it, feeling that they won't be subjected to things that are harmful to them, harmful practices such as cyberbullying, people cloning their profiles on different platforms such as Facebook, people facing trolling and things like that. So if we have policies that protect people when they are navigating the digital space, we'll have more people participate, especially from grassroots level. But then we also spoke of awareness, which is also very critical. If we do not help people to understand how technology works and how useful it is to their community, how they can navigate this space, we're not going to be able to help them to be able to stay in the platform. Because some of the challenges that we have women who are not completely connected to technology in any way, but we also have women who have been connected but have chose to either withdraw or self-censor from using these technologies because of the kind of environment that they faced. Because we know that the current environment of technology is also very toxic in a way. We have challenges on online gender-based violence. We have women public figures that are withdrawing from using platforms because of the kind of treatment or backlash they receive when they're on the different platforms. Things like we know now that AI is advancing fast. We see people having their images worked on using deepfake images that are spreading all over the internet. And we have women who are subject to some of these abuses. You find that you have images of you floating around the internet. You have no idea where they come from. These kind of things really provoke and push many to withdraw from using different platforms that are available in the digital space. And this is more so for grassroots level women who are not even aware of some of these challenges. And when they just see them, the easiest route for them is to withdraw or completely leave this platform. So awareness raising is very critical, just for them to know that this is how the digital space works. These are the challenges that exist. This is how you can navigate these challenges. This is how you can stay safe. And this is how you can be able to make use of the opportunities that are available in this space. Apart from awareness raising itself, this comes up, I think the two of them work together, capacity building, providing enough capacity, training people from grassroots level on how to use technology. Because we find that most women, especially in rural settings or let's say peri-urban areas who are not very much educated around the use of technology, you find that they have a challenge in how they can be able to use this technology. You find that they are not aware of how to navigate it. Okay, you give them a smartphone, they have to be able to use the smartphone, they have to be able to navigate all these other buttons that exist. Okay, and then you tell them again, okay, if you face abuse, you have to go to this place and place to report, you have to do A, B, C, D. They are not aware of that. So that is very critical, building their capacity on how they can use these technologies. But I also think African countries really need to work around creating enabling policies for African innovations. I always say that African countries are big consumers of foreign technology and hardly producers of technology. This is a very sad fact, but is an existing fact. We use Facebook, created in America. We have smartphones imported from China, from the USA. We use different softwares on our phones that are not locally based, they're not created by local innovators. So how can the government in Africa push for that innovation? There need to be good policies that will foster innovation, policies that will attract people to actually create innovations that are local. Why do we need local innovations? Local innovation because they will speak to the needs of the people. They'll be built by people who live within that community and understand the struggles of these communities. Because I can't imagine someone coming with a payment mechanism or platform from the US and applying it directly to someone who is maybe based somewhere on the Kigoma without understanding what challenges do the people in Kigoma face. Do they need something which works on low bandwidth? Do they need something that is in Swahili, or do they need something that is in a local language? All those things can be solved if we have local innovations. And for local innovations to happen, we need enabling environments such as policies that are fostering startups to growth, policies that are enabling people who are coming up with tech startups to be able to run them without having any fear. What are the tax policies that exist? Are they friendly for such kind of startups? Because we know that tech startups, for them to come to a point where they can actually make a good income, they need to be something that actually pushes them. We see many people moving to go to Silicon Valley. They are choosing to go to Ireland to host their technology platform because of the friendly policies that exist there. So for African countries to get that point where we have those local innovations which can address the context of the people that they will serve, that will push for more women to actually participate in the digital space, that will be very critical, having those enabling policies for local innovations. But I also think that, to sum this up, or something that can really help in moving for women to participate in digital spaces, especially in grassroots levels, is also that diversity. Do we have women that actually work in the digital space? They need to be the kind of role models that women will see from their local communities, that this is possible because I see so-and-so is using technology for this purpose, is developing technologies from these communities, from this country. That live example, lived experiences that these people can be able to witness and see can really push for women to participate in the digital space. So I think Africa in general is really trying to grasp, gender is really becoming a huge conversation when it comes to technology and innovation. But there's still a lot of things that can help make that space more accessible for women, especially those from the grassroots level who do not have the knowledge, who do not have the skills, who need a lot more effort for them to get to the space and feel that they can trust this space will work for them. Lastly, I think language is very critical. Let's build a digital space that is in our local languages, a digital space that speaks the language people understand. Most of the technologies we use come in foreign languages, mostly English, or some other big Western language. Very little or very few of the technologies that we adapt or use in our countries actually come in our local languages. For example, maybe in Kiswahili, because when you talk of grassroots level, we speak of people in areas that do not necessarily speak English, so they need to have access to technologies that speak their language, a technology that understands them or gives them information in their local language. I think that would be very critical to ensuring that we have the participation. I think I'll stop there because some of the other points have actually been pointed out by the previous speakers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Rebecca. I think you have really provided us with a very good space to go to our last speaker, who is Ms. Tarisai, because we would want you, Ms. Tarisai, to tell us what is your overall observation of online violence against women in your country, but as well as the SADC regions? And what are some measures that can be used to address online violence against women, and what could be the role of media spaces, being an expert yourself? Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. As you've heard, my name is Tarisai Nyamweda, and I am a program manager from GenderLinks, working on gender media and ICTs, but also coordinating GenderLinks work on women's political participation in Africa. I think I'll take off my video for now, and just stick to the audio. So in terms of online violence against women, this is a pressing issue really within the Southern African region, and my presentation will really be based on work that we've been doing, the evidence that we've gathered together with partners in the region, as well as some key recommendations that came out of some of the work that we did. So as GenderLinks, we are implementing a project on engendering freedom of expression and digital rights in Southern Africa, mainly focusing on Botswana, South Africa, and Namibia. And our project on this topic on digital rights, we are advocating for women to have a right to voices online as well as offline. And when it comes to looking at gender equality and freedom of expression on and offline, we see this as intertwined factors, where you cannot have one without the other. And when women are operating in an environment that seems to stifle them, stifle their existence, stifle their participation, and keep them off these spaces, then they are unable to have digital rights. Their rights are limited. And it is such phenomena such as online violence against women that can actually impinge on these digital rights, that can impinge on freedom of expression. So together with partners, maybe before I go there, maybe let me just get into the context. We are in a region where there's a high prevalence of gender-based violence. From our police departments, from our statistics departments, from research from civil society, they're providing us with evidence that shows that there's increased levels of gender-based violence in the region, across the region. And this takes one to think about how are we going to achieve that elimination of gender-based violence by 2030 targets, how we're going to achieve that. But we're also in a region where there is a lot of legal frameworks to protect women. These legal frameworks do exist, but the challenges across the region as well is around enforcement of these legal frameworks, the tracking of the frameworks in terms of how are they being implemented, the accountability aspect, and as well as resources that are being put in ending gender-based violence both at national and community level. Previous speakers spoke about the gaps in digital access. We have wide digital gender gaps and unequal access to voice, to participation, to affordability that impacts on women's participation in online spaces. But we also see that there is a growing interest to find out about digital violence in Africa. For example, we are seeing that it's slowly being recognized in Africa. We see the African Commission on Women and People's Rights recently put out a resolution on the protection of women against digital violence in Africa. And at the recently ended CSW, we had the priority theme of the CSW for this year was around digital technologies, and many events that we attended at the CSW really raised concerns around online gender-based violence, and that we needed to strengthen the efforts that we are having or implementing in our different constituencies to push back on the pushback for women to have an equal stake as they participate in online spaces. I mean, in digital technologies, like Nashilongo say, digital technologies, they have no doubt been the go-to platform for many women. in terms of mobilizing and campaigning and so forth. For example, here in South Africa, we have had some very notable social movements that women have used to fight gender-based violence, even on these platforms. They've leveraged off platforms like Twitter to campaign and speak out about gender-based violence through their campaigns such as the End Rape Culture, the Total Shutdown, the Men Are Trash movement, and so forth. So we see the greater good that technology has been used for, but there is another side to this technology, which is online violence that women are continuously experiencing. So apart from this utopian appreciation of digital technologies, we also see that women, ICTs are also the biggest threats to women, the biggest threat to attaining gender equality and women's empowerment within our context. To get into the findings that I will share, really, we see that through the analysis that we did, there are growing trends of increase in online gender-based violence, though this is happening at varying levels across the region. And we say varying levels because in some countries across the region, we might not even find a lot of information on this, reports on this. So that was an overall finding that it is growing. There's growing evidence that there is existence of online violence against women. We also have a specific law. We have laws and policies, but around gender-based violence, but no particular law is there or exists around online gender-based violence. So we have no specific online gender-based violence legislation that exists, but in the legislation as well that we have that talks to the regulation on gender-based violence, most of the time, online aspects of gender-based violence are often left out, right? So the frameworks are lacking and do not have sufficient accountability for perpetrators, and they're not really going in depth. We might have national action plans against gender-based violence that might speak to some forms of gender-based violence, but it's not really watertight. And we also might have some gender strategies in some countries in the region. Gender strategies have been put out there, and they do incorporate issues to do with violence against women online.
Yes.
Who is most affected? But
yes, do you need 1 more minute as you finalize?
Yes. So in terms of who is most affected by online violence, it's mostly women. The women as most targeted people, and amongst the women who are most targeted in online spaces, it's human rights defenders. We're talking about activists, female journalists, celebrities, influencers, and politicians as well. The sites of violation where people are actually mostly experiencing violence is on social media platforms such as Twitter, on WhatsApp, on Facebook, and experiencing this violence through email and cell phone correspondence and text messages. And women are trying to find ways to work around this violence that they experience online. And some of the strategies that they've been using around blocking or muting or deleting, sometimes reporting to the platforms, but very little around the kind of responses that they get and the actions thereafter, after reporting, then what is really the major concern. And the violence against women limits their engagement or participation in online spaces, which is limiting as well to freedom of expression and opinion in online spaces. So also there's a lot of lack of data on this issue and lack of awareness amongst different people. I'll move on to the recommendations for different people. Firstly, it's about recognizing that online violence is indeed real violence, and that is far-reaching and impinges on women's rights. And across the region, we also need some policy and regulation formulation that recognizes this as a real type of violence and violation against women. And the policy advocacy that is being done to be strengthened, to strengthen these policy advocacy initiatives and undertaking a concerted effort to push for change in regulation. For different stakeholders, through the research that we did, we encouraged the governments to update the legal and policy frameworks to elaborate on online violence, but also to have a comprehensive definition of what really constitutes online gender-based violence, and we can work with that going forward. And also to put resources in the fight against online gender-based violence, but also to work with the platforms and for platforms to take responsibility of this issue and create awareness on community and safety standards that are on their platforms, because this is where we see that online violence is taking place mostly, to strengthen reporting procedures so that women are not scared or are not fearful in terms of reporting, or do not see reporting as a dead end because nothing happens after that, but also to collect and maintain community-specific data for distribution. And just quickly going to the media, particularly when it's to focus on the media and media spaces, we see also in the research, we saw that most of the people who are targeted online are women journalists. And in terms of journalists, the recognition by media houses that this is a workplace issue, and they need more safety for their employees. And online safety and security training for the journalists is also of paramount importance, but increased media coverage on this issue. There's very limited coverage on what online violence is basically, but also the experiences of different people who have been experiencing violations in these online spaces. And we also need to start to see media houses starting to develop strategies to better protect their journalists, incorporating this in their institutional practices, and having best practices that they can work from. We see in some media houses, they're developing desks where this can be reported to as part of the broader, maybe sexual harassment policy that they have. They have sections where the journalists can report this and handle this. And when journalists do come up and say, this is what has happened to me, the media house rallying behind them and supporting the journalists to seek justice and to operate in a more safe environment. But for civil society, before as I conclude, some of the recommendations for civil society was really around engaging communities, around capacity building and raising awareness to strengthen their knowledge on online violence and the different forms in which it comes up with. And of course, civil society, many civil society organizations, especially women's rights organizations, with very limited resources, have been able to pull off some of these initiatives, but also to partner within civil society so that we work together and not in silos, to work together to try and do a concerted advocacy efforts and awareness raising campaigns on ending online violence. Whether it's through awareness campaigns or whether it is through safety training that we are giving to communities, or digital security training that we are giving to girls in schools and so forth. So there are very varying ways that we could possibly work together and engage to end violence against women online. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Teresa. I now welcome questions. I saw one hand of Esther Mshana. I'm not sure if she's still raising her hand up. I'm welcoming few questions. And while we'll be receiving these questions, I'd like our panelists to think of, as we wind up, the future of African women in technology and innovation. What could be your last take? There is one panelist who just told us we should not look at the future, but think of the now, and maybe we need to do more at the now than thinking of the future. But also, we're told AI is actually making women, or let me say, those who are not aware, withdraw from using technology. So is really technology broadening or bridging the gap, the gender gap in Africa and outside Africa at large? So I'd like to welcome questions. kindly raise your hand for those who would like to ask some questions to specific speakers, but as well as use the chat box to write your questions. Okay, we still don't have people raising hands. Anyone in the chat box?
I'm trying to write.
Or you can just speak it out. You're welcome. You're welcome, Hans.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you, the all panelists. They did well. It's just, I was just saying thank you, but also I want to share, I don't know, I should say experience or what, but what I can say, the issue of digital platform in Africa, even if the second president, I think, talked about the availability of smartphones, but the other problem I can see is also the availability of a strong network, because also it's another issue in Africa, especially here we are. There are other people coming and going out, coming and going out because of the network. Another thing, we have to come together and build together to talk about the digital problems, especially in the social networking, in social networks, when we talk about the violence against women through networks. So we need more education for young girls, how to use the social networks and how to go further, especially when we need to gain through social networks. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Hans. He has enlightened violence against young girls in social networks, how to use these social networks, and so many of them are really facing different challenges, others depression, and some even death because of what they encounter online. Any other question? And I believe that would be a question that can be answered by any of our panelists as they are winding up. Any other question that is directly addressed? Okay, not at the moment. I'd like to give this chance to Ms. Nashilongo to respond to what Hans asked, but also the future of African women in technology and innovation. What is your take as we are winding up? Welcome, Ms. Nashilongo.
Thank you very much again, Flora, for giving me back the opportunity. I might have not gotten the question from Ms. Hansen. I might ask you to kindly just repeat it for me if you have it. And then obviously I'll go ahead and demonstrate possibly what the future should look like. And Flora, please help me with that question.
Yes, so what he just shared is a challenge of young women who are engaging in social media networks and platforms and who face online violence. So what could be, a support system for those young women who are really vibrant in the network and media, and they access these gadgets, but in terms online violence is what they obtain by using social media networks. So what should be done? I think that was kindly the question that he was asking.
All right, no, thank you for helping me with that. I thought I didn't get it very well. So in regards to the online violence that is particularly targeted towards girls, maybe let me step back and just to say that the online violence, like my colleagues have mentioned, particularly Tarisai, but also Rebecca, is that the online violence has become a very big challenge within the African region, and it is taking place in a way in that vacuum where there are no policies to that speaks against online violence, like Teresa have said. We have done an 8-country report, or an 8-country assessment for Southern Africa in particular. And that report has covered, for instance, Malawi, South Africa, Namibia, Angola, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Mozambique. I'm not sure if I missed any other country, Botswana, of course. And what we found out, for instance, is that Teresa have mentioned, is that the laws are just very silent. In many of the countries, there are obviously laws, like in Malawi, where there's a law that supposedly protect women, but at the same time, that same law is being used to sort of that used against the women, for instance, in the disguise of, for instance, decency. So in a way that you have girls that are engaging on social media, building their brands, building their brands, selling products, and engaging in social discourses such as democratic issues, for instance, building skills. They face these challenges of harassment and many others, and they have no particular places to go to. So we find, for instance, on social media where there are what we know as community standards that tells you what your social engagement should be or should not be. Most of those are not accessible in terms of languages. And most of them, even the language is very, very technical for a girl, for instance, that is 14 or 15 and even 18 to articulate what this standard is supposed to be. And in a way that leads many of the women, many of the girls, not knowing what to do when they are online, as Teresa have mentioned, that they ultimately leave the social media platforms. What happens is that when you leave the social media platforms, you leave the opportunities, the many opportunities that social media facilitates, as we have demonstrated through these discussions. That is even of scholarships, of training, of service provision, just amongst others. So the next level where they're supposed to be is to engage with the law and enforcement officers off platforms, offline, right? And what we have seen by examples within these countries is that we have found out that the police in general is not well capacitated to deal with online issues, right? We've seen, or we have some of the cases that has come out was that there was a girl that went to the police and told the police that this is a specific a guy that was my former boyfriend, and he has, for instance, because we have broken up and he's seen how successful I am in my social media engagement, he has gone on to create multiple social media platforms that tells people lies about me, that I've aborted his kids, and so many, many forms of harassment, and not necessarily that these stories are correct. So the police started laughing, right? Because they are not capacitated. They don't know what to do, right? They're not equipped enough to dealing with those issues. Then they said, are you sure these things are taking place on online, right? And they make the victim even look much worse. So maybe to directly go into the answer is that the police needs to be capacitated. That requires that the NGOs and the platforms themselves should find funding, obviously, because the work of the grassroots communities and in a vacuum where policies are not very clear, that communities, particularly society, must engage through the relationships, if they have any, with platforms, and ensure that they capacitate, they train the police. And it's not just the police, it's the whole judicial system that includes the magistrates. They need to understand the intricacies about regulations and about engagement on social media. But we found that in many of the countries, people who have what they call the triple C's, the capital, the connections, and the capabilities of pursuing laws, go to the court. The courts are using traditional laws of dealing with cases. I think some of the laws that are largely used is defamation. Defamation is not what violence online is. Defamation is not bullying and harassment and trolling and sextortions and all of these other things. So yes, a capacity towards the law enforcement officials, and going all the way into the judiciaries and processes. That could be one. Obviously, this is not something that a girl can do, but the girl can do is speak to one person next to them, share amongst yourself, because maybe this is something that has happened to the next person, and maybe the next person has resources of head or was informed about what to do by other community members, and obviously that becomes a challenging, because what we have seen with our research is that when victims of violences online, they suffer in silence. That suffering in silence is what have led into, not just leaving platforms, some commit suicides as the worst case scenario, for instance. So speak to community members around you, speak up to an adult, speak out, look out for people within your communities who are engaging within your space. I think Tanzania, as one of the examples, have been one of the countries where they have a particular school of internet governance that just deals with women, creating a safe space for policy, but also for community engagement of sharing knowledge. And Rebecca, who's a speaker here, has been, is I think the founder or one of the pioneers of the School of Internet Governance. But really it's finding those resources of people, of community members that are able to share, not just to share values, but also to to sort of help you take the next step. For instance, in many of the online places, and you have to find time to know who are the players in this space, you will find community members who are organized in a way that they can report the bully or can stand up the bully, because sometimes when you are doing that only by yourself, you are not able to achieve much in related to the violence that happens to you. But when there are so many of, say 10 or so many of the people that are able to speak out, to face the bully, and to tell the other general public that this person is a harasser, for instance, it helps and it works much better. Flora, then your last question, I think, was related to is that the policy environment, or what's the next step then? In the case that it was please, Flora.
Yes, so the last was just to tell us your take on what you anticipate on the future.
Yeah, the future is, what we need to anticipate is really that the African Union has set out what is called the African Declaration of Human Rights, of African Declaration. Somebody help me, maybe Rebecca. It's what's called the African Declaration on Internet. I'm just trying to see. I was just working on this today. So the African Union has these guidelines that is asking, I think there are about 16 or 17 guidelines that is asking member nations, for instance, to make sure that their laws, whether technology or not technology related, in their governments, obviously, complies or recognize those guidelines that the African Union has set up. With that, we have seen, for instance, the African, I think was that the special rapporteur on human rights, for instance, many of the one on freedom of expression, but also the one on gender, actively engaging on making sure that member nation recognizes these guidelines, but also that they are considered within the lawmaking processes. We know generally, as particularly as Africans are going, many of the African countries are going for elections next year, that they're going to be campaigning, for instance, and we will be, what us as community members should be look out for is what are they saying about the policy, reforming policy in a way that it is protecting the humans or protecting community members or citizens of a particular nation. And with that, we are looking forward to hear, obviously, that they are considering the African declarations on internet engagement, and making sure that they could be used to ensure safety for girls, safety for women, but generally, again, out of the safety issues, the African Union has a digitalization plan. I think it's linked towards 2030. What we are looking forward is that member nations of the African Union, their strategies on digitalizations, their strategies on the fourth industrial revolutions are cognizant of international of these universal laws that first puts people at the center of technology, that digitalization should be serving people. Digitalization does not serve humanity if it is excluding women as the majorities of humanity, but also the majorities of population. So that is really what we're looking forward to. We look forward to the African Union Commission, particularly the one that deals on gender issues, to have to set out guidelines that are particularly seeking to the protection of women and girls, and particularly onto the online space. We know that kind of conversation is taking place, but it should not be limited to freedom of expression, but it should be limited towards the intersection of women and digitalization, particularly. So thank you again, Flora, and let me end here for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. 1 minute to you, Nonhlanhla. What is the future?
Thank you so much, Flora, and to all the panelists. My take will be, I think we need two things. One, it's legislation around online platforms, because this is a new phenomenon and a lot is happening, and there are no regulations around that. People do a lot of things on social media and they get away with it. We've had instances of young people who've been into serious depression because of what was posted online. Some even commit suicide. So we really need to regulate this industry. And then the last one is we need to educate our young people to be mindful of what they post on these social media platforms. And the reason I'm saying that is because most employers now will actually do your reference check, but they will also go to your social media pages, your Twitter, your Facebook, and see what is it that you post. I know of some people who have qualified to a particular job, but have not been given that job because of the things that they posted. Some of them, while they were still young and really didn't know what they were doing, and then it gets to sort of hone them later on. So I think in the different countries, we need to educate our young people to be responsible in terms of what they post on social media. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Taisai, what's your take?
Yeah, thank you, Flora. I think my take from this discussion and going forward would be around living in an age where creating, technology is not only created for women, but created with women in mind, and with women also on the table, as women bring different energies to technology, and they're affected differently by technology. My other point is around women's leadership within the tech space. We need to be on the decision making tables, taking part in revisions of policies and of legislation, because across the world we see that there's lacking political leadership within ICT sector, and the numbers do matter. when we look at this thing. So a more gender responsive leadership that can give impact in supporting gender issues related to ICT legislation, to ICT policies, and oversight. Even within our regional economic commissions, we need to also begin to see women being part or being at the leadership levels within this ICT space. Yeah, I think those are my two takeaways.
Thank you so much. And we finish up with Ms. Rebecca.
Thank you, Flora. I think the key thing is we need to create enabling environments for gender-friendly technology in terms of policy, in terms of innovation, and exactly what was just said just a minute ago, having women at the seat, have a seat on the table when it comes to decision-making and developing or building technologies. I think a future which involves inclusion of women in technology building, including policy making around technology, will be a future that will allow for women to participate inclusively. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to really thank everyone for your participation. But before we wind up, I'd kindly like to welcome Ms. Catherine Kasimbazi as she finishes up, but I would like to acknowledge all the points that have been mentioned by Ms. Tarisai, Ms. Nantla, and Ms. Rebecca, as well as Ms. Nashilongo. It seems as much as we are looking forward for the future, there is a lot of groundwork and homework to do on what is happening in the digital spaces right now. Again, people are withdrawing from using this technology. They are not really friendly, especially for women. But there is something that I know we haven't raised, but the issue of unpaid care work, as in how many women can suffice using technology, advancing with technology, and yet with the whole lots of work to do as mothers, as women leaders, as just women home care workers, and all the works that women are encountered to do. So there are a lot of other issues that are really affecting women and especially young girls to participate. But also someone mentioned on the issue around our education system, that our education system is really hindering girls to participate into the STEM, as we call it in Tanzania, science, technology, I think it's engineering and mathematics subjects, where you find those are the subjects that girls should take to become tech gurus. But again, we don't really have a good number of girls partaking those subjects. So Ms. Catherine Kasimbazi, I'd like you to wind up, and this is knowledge research and analysis head of program from Tanzania Gender Networking Program. You're kindly welcome.
Thank you, Flo. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, on behalf of TGNB, I would like to express my appreciation to everyone who has participated in this dialogue. My deepest gratitude goes to our speakers, panelists, for their valuable contribution and time, and for helping to shape the narrative around the now and the future of women in technology through the regional alliances and solidarity amongst us. I thought it would be appropriate for me to say some summarized points of and ideas that have emanated from this dialogue. I think there is actually a lot of opportunities that we all have, and now I'll talk particularly of women. And as we all say, I think it's more of what we do right now will definitely determine what the future will be like. So I think there is a great need of us working together. And some of these things that were actually raised here will be around, I think, having a collective advocacy from regional to national level on our policies. First, for them to be intentional when it comes to the issue of empowering women, to collectively, encourage local innovations. These were some of the things that were actually mentioned by the speakers, but also, policies that actually are protective of all groups, of course, when you speak about online gender-based violence as well, because I think there are different groups affected in different ways. So to actually have policies and legislations around protection of these different groups that are engaged on daily basis with the internet, but also creating awareness. I think we all have a responsibility around creating awareness when it comes to technology, involvement with the digital spaces, not just amongst ourselves, but also with the grassroots women and men that we work with in our different organizations. As it was also said within this dialogue, that we have only 30% of the people in Africa have access to internet. And we can only imagine the number of women that are actually encompassing the 30%. So I generally think, aside from just the policies and the legislations, I think awareness around that, telling people the pros and of course and the cons, and let them decide for themselves on the internet usage and what technology brings for them individually. I think it's also important. But also, I think some of the things were actually already mentioned before I just continue repeating myself. I just want to say thank you to all of you once again, and stay safe. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Miss Catherine. I wish that we don't leave first. I'd like just to mention we were live in our YouTube channel where we have about 400 subscribers, 400 and more. So this video will be streamed. It is streamed live, but some of others who couldn't participate here with us would also get to hear of what we discussed today. Quickly, thank you, Agnes Mtuhi, Betty Tesha, Clara Godson, Edwin Okama, Farida, Hans Obote, Jackson Chande, Jacqueline Mtesha, Yawa Tweve, Lillian, Neema, Rosemary Sagati, Salma Hatibu, Lucy, Majuma, and so many others who have joined, coming in and going out. And again, thank you to the panelists. This has been fruitful, and we know that this is just a start of this conversation. We are entering the month of April as of tomorrow, but this conversation is still ongoing because we see International Women's Day and CSW is still asking us question, is it digital for all? Is everyone accessing innovation and technology? And are we really advancing those targets to reach about gender equality through technology? So these topics are still ongoing, and we'll still have more dialogues. In that note, it is 6 minutes past 4, and I'd like to say thank you to everyone. Kindly open up your video so that we can just get a photo of everyone who participated. Kindly, for those whose videos can be opened so that we can see each other. I've just opened mine. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. So hi, everyone. I hope we can see each other. And thank you. I've seen you, Rosie Sagati. Thank you so much. The photo has already been taken. We can all say bye. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Ciao.
Bye.